Well, this was a very, very interesting day. I have never gotten more comments on any video I've ever done. Apparently, the whole Meet Kevin thing has caused almost all of the fan base to coalesce around Elon Musk, not around Kevin. so Larry, I know you said to me in the green room before we went on air that you did not actually see what Meet Kevin had to say the other day. But are you surprised that it's running about 9-1 in terms of people saying, no, that was horrible what Kevin did. I've just unsubscribed him. I mean, multiple people saying they unsubscribed Kevin as a result.
Yeah, I'm not a great fan of Meet Kevin. I've met Kevin. Yeah, I mean, he has his shtick. What kind of fixes it for me was, after the I guess Investor Day, he did the whole recording in his jet, in this jet he bought. That kind of gives me that tells me all I need to know. Power to him. He's built a following, and great. But you told me that he said that Tesla is leaderless, and I have to say that Tesla has proven over its years of existence that it probably has one of the greatest business leaders of all time leading it.
Yes.
So I don't take what he says very seriously. That Elon blocked him. Yeah, I'm not fond of blocking people because of their opinions, but it's a personal attack on Elon. So I don't know what I would do if somebody attacked me personally publicly. I'm not sure I have the calmness of mind to just ignore it, but I would hope I would.
Well, the thing is with all of us, we've only got so much time to deal with so many friends, if you will, or so many connections. And Elon, certainly that's true. I think he only has about 100 people he follows. So if you only have 100 people you follow, there's boundaries, and if you cross those boundaries and you get toxic, maybe there's somebody else I'd rather have.
Well, did he unfollow him or did he block him?
My understanding, according to Kevin, he actually put out a video saying Elon Musk blocked me. So I guess blocking is what happened.
Yeah, I think unfollowing is one thing. Blocking is, it's another level. Look, I can't speak for Elon. I admire the man immensely. I admire his leadership immensely. I am somewhat critical of some of the things he does. I think we all reserve the right to have our opinions.
Absolutely.
Most of our opinions are wrong most of the time compared
not
to
mine.
his.
Not mine. Don't say
not
that.
Yours. Not yours. I would freely admit to being wrong very often, because I'm very limited in my experience of life. Compared to some, maybe a little bit more compared to others, but I have my background and my prejudices, and so I'm old enough to admit that I do. But yeah, but I think I do have opinions on Elon's. So now that I've managed to go back over and read carefully the transcript, I do feel that there's a lot to be taken away from the call.
Absolutely. I feel like it was maybe the most news creating call ever, but it all got kind of, tossed aside by all the doom and gloom talk. And I would have done the talk differently because I'm, the optimist of the decade. But I actually have the plaque, Larry. I was given the plaque, optimist of the decade. Okay. So, anyway, I would have done it differently. And I can't be critical in a constructive way, that I don't think that is how the next call should go, that there needs to be some kind of just a generally positive approach to it. Now, having said that, let's dig into the part that you were most affected by, which we haven't talked about yet. And I think that is the challenges that you see ahead for the macroeconomy.
Yeah, so we didn't talk about it after the call. You know, we had that conversation after the call, and we talked about the general demeanor of the call, and and I correctly predicted the stock was going to go down. I didn't predict how far it was going to go down, but it went down. And one can criticize the approach and the general demeanor. I think it would be good for Elon to restrain himself and let his people speak more freely and more completely. He tends to cut them off, but affirming what they said, but cutting them off, and sometimes actually contradicting what they said. But it would be good for them to have their own voice. And we know from the book that he's not given to doing that very easily. But let me talk about the economic environment that Elon addressed. As I passed through it and re-listened to it and read it, I found myself in concordance with him on the economic risks. I think the economic risks right now are the most serious I've seen since 2008, and in some ways more serious than 2008. 2008 was a matter of the value of a very large number of loans held by the banks, rendering them insolvent.
Compared to their underlying asset values.
Well, yeah, compared to their equity value, really.
Yeah.
I mean, their equity was a pitiful amount, a pitiful margin of that loss. And actually, if you look at Bank of America today, I mean, if it had to market its bonds, the bonds that it holds, it would be insolvent. And why should it not market those bonds? And that's less so for the other banks, and far less so for JP Morgan Chase, who is always the most conservative but those 4 or 5 banks really, and even 6 or 7 banks, account for by far the bulk of the banking sector.
Sure.
The rest of the 8,000 banks, or I don't even know if there are 8,000 banks left anymore, but the rest of the banks are pitifully small. Even in the aggregate, they're not, that great. But that's not the focus, although that may become the focus if the rest of the problems become real. And the rest of the problems are simply this. The biggest bank of all, the Federal Reserve Bank, would be technically insolvent by any measure if it were not backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. Mm-hmm. The problem is that the full faith and credit of the United States is now hanging in the balance. And you wouldn't think so, because the dollar is, riding high, which points to a global problem. If the biggest economy is being buoyed by a fiscal situation that is really, really underwater, and they're the most solvent of all the countries in the world, then you have to wonder, at what point does this upside down pyramid teeter on its point and collapse?
Right. So Larry, let me ask you a question. I've read a couple of articles on this subject where people are saying that we might be getting into a new economic theory, a new money theory,
Yeah.
that because Japan was able to weather this, and even though their economy was flat for 30 years and their housing values dropped in half, having said that, nobody's starving in Japan. The economy is now actually starting to pick up again. And some people are saying, well, maybe congressmen, senators around the world, legislators and presidents and dictators are all saying, you know what, just print.
Well, to go through what the Japanese went through is not a pretty sight. But one of the most important is not a pretty experience, by the way, not at all a pretty experience. And the individual Japanese taxpayer didn't have the level of debt that our taxpayers have. Although, individual debt is not as serious as it was back in 2008.
Right.
But if we were to see a serious decline in the value of property across, all classes of property, there would be a general bankruptcy. But you cannot compare the reserve currency of the world to what was a challenger, if you like. It's kind of like, the big bank and the challenger bank. Well, the challenger stalled out and, spent 30 years in the wilderness, 40 years in the wilderness, or 35 years, whatever, in the wilderness. I'm not sure how America would act to live that time in the wilderness. And I'm not sure what happens to the global economy because, so many economies are on the edge. So many third world and second world economies are on the edge.
Right. Germany.
And even Europe is on the edge. So, and whether the wars that we see across the world now are a symptom of this or not, I don't know. But if there is a breakdown in the economics, in the fiscal structure, it could have a terrible impact, on the world, far more so than a Japanese decline. I don't believe in new economic theories. I've heard so many of them. In the 70s, inflation was not terrible until it was terrible. And I think debt is not terrible until it's terrible. And I think we're in that stage now. Elon is seeing signs from a different perspective of a potential, recession. Right. If we hit a recession, one wonders what the shape of that recession would be, and it's worth thinking about because it's going to be a different recession. I've spoken often on this program, every recession is different. Yes. Every boom is the same, yes, but every recession is different. So every boom, everybody's happy the same way, but in every recession, everybody's unhappy in different ways, right, yes, like Tolstoy's families.
Yes.
And I do think that we have a very serious problem in this country of the racial divide, of the political divide, and a serious recession, I think, would have very, very serious, social and political impacts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
Europe is more serious, though.
I think so. Yeah, I think theirs is a bigger problem.
Yeah, and Europe is not one problem, it's 19 different problems or 23 different, depends on how you count. And every country is different and every country will suffer differently. But politically, Europe has more schisms in it than even we do, because in Europe, you don't have 50 different states that all work under the same political constitution. You have, so long story short, because I'm getting too long in this, but there is a lot of uncertainty that that will become quite serious from a global economic and social point of view. And I haven't touched the third and the fourth world. And I haven't talked about the schism between, the Arabs and the Jews and the Russians and the Europeans and the Chinese and,
so much, yes. So Larry, one of the things that I try to do, and I think you probably do too, especially in business, but I think even in trying to take a look at the economy, the direction it's taking, the way the stock market is going, or even Tesla in each of its divisions, is to say, what do I think are the percentage chances of different kinds of scenarios playing out?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have that scenario, the possibility of that scenario playing out. You have a scenario that's kind of, let's say, I think what most of the street thinks is going to happen right now, which is either a mild recession or no recession, maybe only 1.5% growth next year, or something like that, with inflation continuing down slowly, the last 1% being, going from 3% to 2% being so hard. I think that's where the street kind of in general is, with lots of, people on both ends of that idea. And then there's Randy and about 3 others who think that inflation, Kathy Wood's among those 3 others. Okay. And there's a bunch of, it's not like there's the folks that agree with me on this are completely out of their minds like me. But rather I see deflation coming. Costco sees deflation coming. Kathy Wood sees deflation coming. I see productivity being extremely strong right now, increasing, I should say, the increased productivity being extremely strong right now, which will help this deflationary thing happen. And it's a good deflation when you've got productivity. And then we have I think the bond yields, or the losses in the bond values being so low is a buying opportunity. And at a certain point, people are going to buy that opportunity. They're just not going to pass it up forever. There's so much money sitting on the sidelines among people your and my age that are looking at that and go, I've never bought bonds in my life, Larry. I haven't made the decision yet, but I'm looking at, I can get a 10-year bond with a 4.9% lead, and then maybe ride that to a really positive result if the yields do come down. So anyway, I see the possibility that in other words, there's some percentage possibility that my Pollyannic view is true, and that we go into a year where we have a 2.5%, 3% growth. We have inflation solved. We have bond yields dropping back into the 3% range, the porridge was neither too hot or too cold.
So Pollyanna here, and who's the guy who sees the disaster coming? I mean, we have these 2 views.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to talk about was, and I went on too long about the damn risks, but what should Tesla do? Mm-hmm. Is the question to be asked. And this is where I really part with Elon quite substantially, because he's talking about holding back, slowing down, wait and seeing, and so on.
But can we zero in on that? As far as I know, the wait and see was only Gigamex and Model Y ramp. Is there anything else that he said he was slowing down on?
Well, let's talk about the Giga Mexico.
Okay.
Giga Mexico is the high volume producer of the next gen.
Right.
Either that, or they're going to have to build a new factory in a second factory in Texas.
Right.
My contention is Tesla is too slow to introduce new product.
Okay.
My contention is they're trying to use 2 products and expand their TAM by dramatically reducing pricing. Mm-hmm. And squeezing costs as far as possible, but they're using those 2 cars to expand and they're trying to cast those two cars, which are both luxury cars, semi-luxury cars or luxury cars, and they're trying to penetrate below those categories of vehicles. And, you know, we have the robotaxi coming shortly. They're going to have to use those cars for robotaxis as well. If you believe in the robotaxi story, and if you understand if you agree with what I say, if you concur with what I say about trying to squeeze these cars into a TAM that they're not ideal for because they're priced incorrectly. I mean, they're doing bloody well in terms of sales, amazingly well. And people criticize their sales and so on, but they're doing fantastically well. They're far exceeding their theoretical TAM. They're far exceeding the TAM that was assigned to them by, you know, some of the auto analysts. So my point is that it is this time that Tesla should be being aggressive about building really, really, really high throughput factories for this next gen car. They should be doing everything possible. And, you know, I think they were too slow to introduce the Cybertruck. And I think they're being too slow to really ramp up, to plan the ramp up and to execute the ramp up for this next gen car.
All right. So now let me take Elon's position. I think what happened is that the 4680 ramp did not happen as quickly as they thought it was going to happen. And now all of a sudden they're seeing that they're good. I did a Brian Wong video yesterday where we talked about they're going to have so many 4680s by the end of next year. It'll be just crazy. So so now that he sees that he's got that 4680 thing solved, that was what was holding up the Cybertruck.
That's not what he said. Well, the Cybertruck. I'm not. Look,
okay, you said
the Cybertruck's a done deal. I don't want to argue or debate the Cybertruck. It is what it is. Okay. I'm talking about
the Gen 3.
No walking Giga Mexico.
Okay, so let me address that now from what I think is Elon's point of view. I'm going to use the Isaacson book as my main focus here.
Yeah.
Is that Elon was ready to go on Gigamex. There was problems, and there was, you know, permitting problems and issues that they didn't expect. So that slowed him down for a minute. But then it hit him in May, we think, from the Isaacson book, that he really wanted to have his people on. You got it.
Randy, I'm right there. He's doing the right thing. I actually recommended it.
Okay, all right.
Before he said it, I did. On somebody's YouTube channel, I said, listen, they should do that. Yeah, maybe. I said, listen, they should do the car there, you know.
Right.
But my problem is they're not planning for huge production. And this has been the consistent story. They've always, the production lines came always a little bit too late. Berlin, Texas, I think that they should be going hell for leather in Mexico, and that should be their primary focus. Yeah, the Cybertruck's very important. I don't want to underestimate that. Building the Y and the Y and the 3 next gen, Highland, that's perfect. I have no arguments. And the fact that the 4680 battery is now beginning to come in volume and growing in volume, and they can see how they can add the lines, and they're already working on next gen. Notwithstanding the coming recession, if you believe a recession is there, you should double down on Mexico.
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna take Elon's position again, is that he's working, that they're having, I'm sure, meetings every day or every other day, maybe 5-minute meetings, you know, every single day, talking about Gigamex and trying to decide what the timing would be. And that the design, they've already, apparently, I think this was also in the Isaacson book, they decided to make it even bigger than they had originally intended, which was already going to be big. And that organizing that, laying it out, putting together the what do you want to call it, the timelines, and making sure that everything is lined up in order to build that thing correctly, that potentially they've been looking at this week by week, month by month, whatever, and saying, you know what, overall, it's better if it's another month out. Overall, it's better if it's another month out. And I wonder whether the worry about the economy is kind of something to say, as opposed to what really was causing them to say, let's build it in Texas. Let's get that first line up, whatever that's going to be, whether it can build 1,000 a week or 2,000 a week, whatever that line's going to be. And we'll get that line down smart. And by the time we get to the place where we need to start doing the tooling in GigaMex, we can start it in February and still get to where we need to be based on that first line going up in Texas.
A lot of words, but still, I think I'm concerned, and my concern is that this has been a consistent story. The semi, the Cybertruck, each step has been a little bit behind what
everybody would hope for. Yes,
what we would have
projection was. Yes,
and I think we're heading that way in Mexico now.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that is not exactly Good News Friday, Larry. Was that
well?
Was there any good news? Of course, this.
Yeah. There's great news. There's great buying opportunities coming from Tesla. That's really serious. I mean, I'm serious about that.
Yeah.
I don't know where we will reach the bottom, but I think we should be buying now, buy down, buy up. I think it's a great opportunity to buy.
Well, I know you're a student. I know you're a student of history, and historically, going down 10% after the call is not shocking. I guess this is the 23rd time we've had a 10% or more down in a single day. So this is not a shock. And after the earnings call, when it goes down like that, it generally takes about 2 weeks to recover all of it and then some.
My guess is going to take longer this time. My guess is going to be more resilient until we get, because we got so little visibility into the fourth quarter and into next quarter. I think this is going to hang around through until the upcoming earnings call. Maybe the Cybertruck event will help us a little bit, but
sorry,
it's okay. This is live. Or almost live, sort of live.
Okay. I didn't know. All right. So,
well, this morning
where we are. We are where we are. And
this morning, I projected that it would follow the NASDAQ around today, which is exactly what it did. I believe that it will follow the NASDAQ around next week unless there's news.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be lots and lots of Cybertruck news over the next 3-4 weeks. As we get closer to the actual handover, there will be so much Cybertruck news. And once we get past the PCE, if it comes in well, then I think the bull market will be back in place. So there you go.
Randy, you're indomitable. Indomitable. Nothing will keep you down. Well, good for you. I mean, from your lips.
There you go. Except you want to buy more, so you want it to hang around.
I do. No, these are good prices. I mean, the stock could go down to $100. I'll just keep buying, and I'm comfortable. I'm looking for 2026, as you know, and I'm very comfortable. I just want to keep accumulating. I've got, I'm very jealous of these guys who've managed to accumulate very large numbers of shares. I've only got, for me, a relatively small amount. So I'm just buying.
Well, if you think your amount's small, I've got a really small amount, but I have much more limited needs, I guess. I'm not sure. All right, Larry, it's been it's been great. Thank you for joining me yet again on a Good News Friday. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.